Disclaimer. This book may contain content that is considered historically inaccurate or culturally insensitive by modern standards. My hope is that by exploring old literature, we will better understand why people of the past thought the way that they did and understand the influences that shape their culture. This video is not intended for young audiences. Hi, I'm Morgan, and today I will be reading to you from Out of Door Book, which is the 7th book in a series or collection of books called The Children's Hour, which was published by Houghton Mifflin Co. in 1907. And I am excited to read to you The Children of Blentarn Ghyll by Charlotte M. Yonge. Blentarn Ghyll is the name of a little narrow gorge in those Westmoreland mountains, called Langdale Pikes, at whose feet lie the lovely green vale and lake of Grasmere. The lake is fed by mountain streamlets, called in the north becks. One of these becks comes down another beautiful valley called Easdale, sheltered by mountains and green with grass, as smooth and soft as on a lawn, from being cropped short by the sheep, which can be turned out here earlier in the spring than on the other mountain sides. At one end, Easdale opens on the village of Grasmere. At the other is a steep ascent, leading to a bare, stony ravine, shut in on all sides by high mountains, and with no outlet except the rough descent into Easdale, and likewise a dangerous winding path about 6 miles over the mountains to Langdale Head. This lonely ravine is called Far Eastdale, and at the upper end there formerly stood a cottage named Blentarn Ghyll. Ghyll means a cleft worn in the rock by water, and just above the cottage there is such a cleft, opening from a basin in the rock that must once have been a tarn, or mountain lakelet. But the pool is now dry, and for want of the living eye of sparkling water, it is now termed Blentarn, or Blind Pool. The cottage was the dwelling of an honest old soldier named George Green, who had taken the little mountain farm and married an active, bustling woman, who kept her home in great order and regularly sent her children, tidily dressed, to school at Grasmere whenever the weather did not make the long, wild mountain walk impossible for them. It was in the winter of the year 1807 that there was an auction of furniture at a farmhouse at Langdale Head. These sales are great occasions among the people of these hills. Everyone attends them for a considerable distance round, and there is much friendly hospitality, much business of all sorts transacted, and many meetings of old friends, who scarcely ever see each other at other times. To this gathering George and Sarah Green set off early in the forenoon of a bright winter day, leaving their cottage and 6 little ones in the charge of the eldest sister, a girl of 9 years old, named Agnes, for they had neither indoor nor outdoor servant, and no neighbor nearer than Grasmere. Little Agnes was, however, a remarkably steady and careful child, and all went well through the day. But towards night the mist settled down heavily upon the hills, and the heavy sighing in the air told that a storm was working up. The children watched anxiously for their parents, but the fog cut off their view, flakes of snow began to fall, and darkness closed in early on them. Agnes gave the others their supper of milk and oatmeal porridge, and they sat down, waiting and watching, and fancying they heard sounds in the hills. But the clock struck 1 hour after another, and no step was on the threshold, no hand at the latch, no voice at the door. Only the white, silent flakes fell thicker and thicker, and began to close up the door, and come in white, clinging wreaths through the crevices of the windows. Agnes tried to cheer the others up, but there was a dread on them all, and they could not bear to move away from the peat fire on the hearth, round which they were nestled. She put the 2 youngest, who were twins, to bed in their cradle, and sat on with the others, 2 boys and another girl, named Catherine, till the clock struck 12, when she heard them one by one say their prayers, and doing the same herself, lay down to rest, trusting to her heavenly Father's care. The morning came, and no father and mother, only the snow falling thicker than ever, and almost blocking them in. But still Agnes did not lose hope. She thought her father and mother might have taken shelter at night in some bield, as she would have termed a sheepfold, or that the snow might have prevented them from setting out at all, and they might come home by Grasmere in the morning. She cheered herself up, and dressed the others, made them say their prayers, and gave them their breakfast, recollecting as she saw the lessening stores that her mother must know how little was provided for them, and be as anxious to get home as they were to see her there. She longed to go down to Grasmere to inquire, but the communication was entirely cut off by the snow, for the beck was, in the winter, too wide for a child to leap, and too rapid to be waded, and the crazy wooden bridge that crossed it had so large a hole in it that, when concealed with snow, it was not safe to attempt the passage. She said afterwards that she could not help being terrified at the loneliness and desolateness, but that she recollected that, at least, if she could not get out, no bad man could get in to hurt them, and she set herself resolutely to comfort and help the lesser creatures who depended on her. She thought over all that could be done for the present, and first wound up the clock, a friend that she could not allow to be silent. Next she took all the remaining milk and scalded it, to prevent it turning sour. Then she looked into the meal chest, and made some porridge for breakfast, but the store was so low that she was forced to put all except the babies upon short allowance. But to reconcile the others to this, she made cakes of a small hoard of flour, and baked them on the hearth. It was snowing so fast that she feared that the way to the peat stack would be blocked up, and therefore her next work was, with the help of the 2 boys, to pull down as much fuel as would last for a week, and carry it indoors, and she examined the potatoes laid up in bracken leaves, but fancying that if she brought them in, the warmth of the cottage would spoil them, she only took enough for a single meal. Milking the cow was the next office performed by this orderly little maid, but the poor thing was half-starved and had little to give. Agnes saw that more hay must be given to her, and, calling the boys, scrambled with them into the loft and began to pull down the hay. But this was severe work for such young children, and darkness came on in the midst, frightening the 2 little fellows, so that it required all the sisters' steady resolution and perseverance to finish supplying the poor cow with even that night's supper in bed. Supper time came, and after it the motherly child undressed the twins and found voice to sing them to sleep, after which she joined the huddle of the other 3, nestled on the hearth, and hour after hour they listened for the dear voices, till they fancied they heard sounds of the howling blast, held their breath, and then as it died away, were conscious of the silence of the lull. So fierce was the snowdrift that Agnes had to guard the door and window from admitting long wreaths of it, and protect the fire from being put out as it came hissing down the chimney. Again her watch lasted till midnight, and no parents, no help came. Again she went to bed, and awoke to find the snow falling thicker than ever, and hope failing within her. Her fond, active mother, her strong, brave father, a noted climber, would surely long ago have found the way home to their children, had all been well with them. Agnes described herself as getting through this 3rd lonely day by keeping her little flock together on the hearth, and making them say their prayers aloud by turns. By the following morning the snow was over, and the wind had changed, so sweeping away the drifts that though the treacherous bridge might not be attempted, a low stone wall had been exposed, which these little mountaineers knew would serve as a guide into Grasmere by a circuit, which would avoid crossing the brook. It would be needful to force some gaps, that is, to push down the loose stones of the uncemented stone walls that divided the fields, and the little boys came with Agnes to help her in this as far as the ridge of the hill, but the way was long and unsafe for small children, and Agnes sent them back, while she made her way alone, a frail little being in the vast slopes of snow, to the house nearest in Grasmere. She knocked at the door, and was made kindly welcome, but no sooner did she ask for her father and mother than smiles turned to looks of pity and dismay. In half an hour the news that George and Sarah Green were missing had spread through the valley, and 60 strong men had met at Kirktown, the hamlet close to the parish church, to seek for them. The last that was known of them was that, after the auction, some of their friends had advised them not to try the dangerous path so late, but when they had gone, no one knew. Some of the people of Langdale likewise had heard wild shrieks at midnight on the night after the sale, but had fancied them merely the moans of the wind. One day after another the search continued, but still in vain. The neighbors patiently gave up their work day after day to turn over the deep snow around the path from Langdale, but for 3, or some say 5, days no trace of them was found. At last dogs were used, and guided the seekers far away from the path, until a loud shout from the top of a steep precipice told that the lost was found. There lay Sarah Green, wrapped in her husband's greatcoat, of course quite dead, and at the foot of the rock his body was found, in a posture that seemed to show that he had been killed by the fall without a struggle. The neighbors thought that the mist and snow must have bewildered them till they had wandered thus far in the darkness, and that George had been making a few steps forward to make out the road when the fall took place, but that his wife had very possibly been unconscious of his fall, and stood still where he had left her, uttering those sad cries that had been so little regarded at Langdale, until she was unable to move, and was benumbed by the sleep of cold. Those who knew them best thought that the poor woman's grief and terror for her lonely little ones had probably so overpowered her as to disturb her husband's coolness and presence of mind, and that if he had been alone, he would probably have easily saved himself. The brave little girl, keeping her patient watch and guard over the 5 younger ones, and setting out on her lonely way through the snow, must have had more of the spirit of her soldier father than of her mother. It was to Dorothy Wordsworth, the sister of the poet, little Agnes was persuaded to tell the story of this calm, resolute, trustful waiting time, which, simple as it is, we think our readers will own as truly worthy to be counted among golden deeds. The father and mother were buried on a lonely spring day at St. Oswald's churchyard at Kirktown, and Wordsworth wrote, "Now do these sternly featured hills look gently on this grave, and quiet now the depths of air, a sea without a wave. But deeper lies the heart of peace, and quiet more profound. The heart of quietness is here, within this churchyard bound, and from all agony of mind it keeps them safe and far, from fear and grief, and from all need of sun or guiding star." After the funeral, the farm folk of the neighborhood were all pressing forward to beg to adopt one or other of the little orphans. The twins were kept together. Catherine was taken by the Wordsworth family. Agnes and her brothers found separate but comfortable homes among their parents' friends. Help came pouring in. Queen Charlotte and her daughters were greatly touched by the mountain child's tender motherliness, and sent a handsome donation for the benefit of the orphans, and so many subscriptions were offered that at last Miss Wordsworth declined receiving any more, lest the children should be injured by having too much wealth for the station to which they were growing up. And that is the end of The Children of Blentarn Ghyll by Charlotte M. Yonge. Thank you for listening to this story with me, and I hope that you have a great day.